Hello, my name is Opal Singleton. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Million Kids. Not 1 million, not 10 million, not $1 million kids, just called millionkids.org. We're an organization in Southern California. We've been around since 2010. Actually started 2008, but in the U.S. in 2010. And we are all about keeping kids safe from predators. We have a group of us. I'm not the only one, by the way. There's some very, very important people involved with Million Kids. Most of us are related to some sort of law enforcement. I myself am a post-certified law enforcement trainer, but some of the people are retired law enforcement, retired Homeland Security, or even one is a current private investigator for child sex crimes. And so there's 8 of us, and we look at articles all day, every day. We look at cases, and we share our opinion on what is happening. And we look for ways to be able to say never again should a child be violated. And this has really been something in the last year because of artificial intelligence, because of financial sextortion kind of taking the world by storm. And so today I want to talk to you about a couple of articles that came out in our newsletter. Our newsletter is researched, packaged, and promoted by an amazing lady by the name of Dina Murray. She lives in the Midwest, and she is absolutely phenomenal, the best of the best. And she publishes a newsletter, which I highly recommend that you sign up for. It is just go to millionkids.org, sign up for the newsletter. We don't harass you. I occasionally ask for money, but I'm not very good at it, so you're safe on that, and we don't sell your name. But every week she publishes concise, packaged information on the latest cases that you ought to know about, especially if you're law enforcement or a school educator, or maybe you're a counselor or a teacher or a first responder of some type, or a pastor or a faith-based person. This information that she publishes is really top-notch. Well, the reason I'm sharing that with you is I want to talk about a couple of the articles that she put out in her newsletter this week that really got my attention. So the first one is titled, and you can go back to the newsletter of the week 719 if you're wanting to see it, but I can just give you the link verbally. Financially motivated sextortion alert for educational settings. This is an article coming out of the UK, out of England, London area. There is another one that comes on the heels of that called Sharing Nudes and Semi-Nudes, Advice for Education Settings, Working with Children and Young People. Also, it is coming from the UK. And the reason why I want to talk about this is some of my own line of thinking and what an eye-opener these 2 particular articles are for me. So let me set the stage for you. You know, I've been combating sextortion for a very long time. In the beginning, it was like a pedophile that, wanted to get images and videos, or maybe control the individual, maybe meet up with the individual, and in some of the cases, it actually turned violent and even ended in death. But they were individual blackmailers is what was going on, and they were using social media to access their kids and actually to control their kids. Then we began to see them going in the dark web and forming groups of pedophiles. And there was actually what we called crowdsourcing pedophilia, where there were groups of people that would like to find young girls especially and harass them and get them to send nude photos and like that, and they would trade those. And so pedophilia and sextortion kind of went hand in hand as they built these large-scale dark web rings, where a couple of them, the latest one I saw was 1.8 million subscribers. Oh my gosh, that's enough to just over the moon. I mean, it's hard to believe. If your child sends a nude photo to someone that's part of that ring and they enter it in that ring, your child's photo can go out to over 1 million people in a heartbeat, and you'll never be able to get them back. Now, I know I did a recording a couple of weeks ago on the Take It Down Act. And yes, you can submit the photo to the Take It Down Act. And the service providers, the ESP, like Meta and Facebook and like that, can use their hashtags and go in and try to find that photo wherever it's at on their platform or anywhere they can find it. And by law now, they are required to take it down. Well, there's some fallacy with that. I mean, that's a great thing. I'm not putting it down. I did a whole talk on this, a whole podcast on it a 3 weeks ago. And that's a help. But the kid has to keep the original photo, and you have to believe that whoever is receiving it has not used artificial intelligence to modify that photo, because what's going to happen there is they're going to use a hashtag, and it has to match exactly if they're going to take it down. But it is a tool for a kid that has a photo out there, and it is worth pursuing. So I don't want to put that down. But about a month or two ago, we became aware, maybe 3 months, time passes when you do this work, and we became aware of financial sextortion, and it is just mind-boggling. And that's what I'm writing my book on, and I really, really hope that I get it out before too long, because one of the challenges is it is a developing story. And I'm going to be doing an ebook, and I'm doing an ebook on that because I want to be able to modify it and change it and like that. So financial sextortion is a little bit difficult to explain, but you have to understand this before I can talk about should schools get involved in this. So financial sextortion happened because a couple of years ago, the entire world became connected by internet. Now, there's still many third world countries that are not online yet, but this will be a way of life. There's no turning back. Our entire world will be connected by internet. One of the reasons I'm writing this book is who's telling this to our kids? Who is sitting them down and explaining to our kids, you are no longer talking about that cute little thing down the street. You're probably talking to somebody in a Nigerian cartel or a Myanmar cartel or one of the front people that they are putting online to find you so that they can get turned back over to you, and then you end up being blackmailed. So what is happening as third world countries have come online, the cartels very quickly realized that they had major opportunity here. If you can access a UK kid, an Australian kid, a US kid, that our families have a lot of money compared to their families. Even if you're very poor in the US, we have a whole lot more than if you're living in the outskirts of Nigeria somewhere. On the same time, many people in those third world countries are very, very poor, and they are using technology in order to be able to find jobs, to find work, to go to a foreign country, to better themselves, to get out of their poor little community, and like that. So what is happening is cartels are tricking the poor people from the various countries, and they are trafficking those people by holding them in some particular third world country out in some remote situation. I just had, yesterday I think it was, we saw an article where in Cambodia, they went out and found 2,500 people being trafficked that are being forced to work on a scam farm. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, when you're through with this, please stay with me to the end, okay? But when you're through with this, go on to YouTube and look up scam farm or cyber scam farm, and you will see what I'm talking about. There are literally, they believe there could be 30,000 of them in Myanmar. Myanmar is a third world poor country that is in war. So they bring these people in, they trap them, and what are they doing? They are forced all day long to go out and try to access US kids, UK kids, Australian kids, and their deal is to look like a hot 14-year-old and get one of our kids to send a nude. Now, those people are being trafficked too, but there's not a lot you can do about it until the people in their countries are willing to go out and try to rescue them and like that. Although the UN is taking action now, I'm starting to put a lot of heat on these. My point is that if you have 30,000 people that are trying to look like 14-year-olds to your child, sooner and later, one of your kids is going to be approached by what looks like a hot 14-year-old girl wanting to have a sexual encounter. Now, it's probably a 36-year-old male in Myanmar somewhere that he himself is being violated, but your child will not know that. Here's why I'm taking the time for this. This is the most brutal kind of trafficking I've ever seen. To date, 42 young people, mostly males, have taken their own life. And these are top-of-the-line kids. And you will find me shouting this from the topest building everywhere I go. I live and breathe so that you understand it and you can help me tell this story. We give all of our resources to other agencies. We train the trainer. We are small. We want to get this word out, and you can help us. And you can help us first by understanding how this works. I did a whole podcast just on financial sextortion about 3 weeks ago, and you will hear more, and keep an eye out for Digital Warfare, the ebook that's coming out. So what is happening is this has become a global phenomena in its own way, because it isn't just Nigeria, it isn't just Myanmar. The UN literally did a big announcement saying it's now in 66 third world countries, and they're just getting started. And some of these countries are literally holding as many as 30,000 people to get them to look like a young hot girl to our kids. By the way, they also get into cryptocurrency scams, and they also run romance scams for our seniors, where they get them to send their life savings thinking that they finally found the love of their life late in their life, and it's going to give them everything you want. These are scam farms, and they don't care how they scam you. They are looking to get US dollars, and that's what it's all about, and they don't care if your kid gets destroyed along the way. So this is huge, and we're just getting started. It's absolutely huge. And we have already lost 42 kids. What happens is that as your child gets a weak moment, and that's usually what it is, it's usually a kid who is a dynamite successful kid, a homecoming king, a sports star, somebody that everybody loves. They've already got their college picked out. They are not depressed. They're not living on the edge. They are people who are super achievers, and they get caught at a weak moment. A lot of these kids are 13, 14 years old, a little hormonal, okay? You get it. That happens at that age. A lot of them, maybe they got in a fight with their girlfriend, or they're flunking out of something at school, or something isn't quite right, or maybe they're just kind of, playing on a video game chat room with a lot of sex and they're stimulated. Whatever it is, they get caught in a weak moment. And let's face it, we all have them. There is nobody who's perfect in this world. And once that image is sent, what happens is their life turns into living hell. And I'm sorry if that word offends some of you, but there's no other word for it. That's exactly what happens. One kid literally got 1,000 texts in a 24-hour period, and he ended up taking his own life. The young man we talked about 2 weeks ago, Caleb Moore from El Dorado, Kansas, it was only 35 minutes from the moment he sent that photo to he decided to take his life. And he showed them the gun, and they said, fine. And that's exactly what is happening. So part of me says we have got to take this by the horns. We've got to educate everywhere we can. Educate every other advocacy group out there. Educate in schools. Educate parents. Educate pastors. Everywhere we can to get this word out. But here's the thing. As I sit here day in and day out with my team of 8 people, we say, what can we do? How do we fix it? How do we get a documentary? How do we get a PSA? How do we get everybody to take this on? Now, It is being taken on. The UN's about to have a big worldwide conference on it. I'm going to be at it by Zoom, and several of our team is going to be on it because I want to hear what happens. We're hearing more and more. We got the Take It Down Act, the Report It Act. At least this makes the idea of deep fakes something that you can report and punish. You see, all of this is happening at the same time that we have artificial intelligence and deep fakes. And so they don't even have to send a nude. They can get it, just their image online, and what will happen is they'll turn it into a nude and start blackmailing. So we've got to come up with protocols and processes for parents to talk to kids and for a child to be able to report in school. And that's where I'm going with this podcast. I need to hurry up, it's half over. So let's take a look at this. I saw this article because I'm saying to myself, what can we do in schools? Now that's difficult because this is a high liability situation. On top of it, schools already have their hands full with school shooters and drugs and semi-terrorists and things like that is happening. But as I start to look at this situation where kids are on the front line of a worldwide web, I say to myself, this is akin to school shooter when you think about it, because most of the victims are school-age kids. And in many cases, they're on a school computer at first, although this is mostly happening on their own private computers, but they're in a school setting. Now, what is happening with artificial intelligence is we're starting to see kids that get other people's heads and they use nudify sites. I talked about that last week, where they make deep fakes of their fellow students, and then they themselves are the perpetrator, not the people overseas. So all this technology is going to drive this to a completely different place. On top of it, I was reading this article that I'm looking at today, and I want you to, if you get our newsletter, I hope you'll take the time to look at this article. I'm just barely touching the surface of it. The article starts out, and it starts talking about, here it is right here, some of the last few days, financially motivated sexual sextortion alert for education settings from the UK, United Kingdom. Sharing nudes and semi-nudes, advice for education settings, meaning teachers and staff, and like that, working with children, young people. So I pulled off these articles. There's a lot of it, and it's really, really eye-opening, and that's why I wanted to have this podcast with you today, because I welcome your feedback on what you think. My first line of thinking is somehow, some way, we need an intervention center within a school, because most of these kids are school-age kids. Now, when I look at the UK version of this from these articles, they immediately start off by talking about the designated safeguarding leaderships, DSL, designated safeguarding leads. And apparently in their school, they have some lead person for intervention. I'm thinking that might be like our counselors or somebody like that. But that caught my attention because one of the things our team of 8 has been speaking about is, how does this work? How do we put educators on the front line where if someone is thinking of, for instance, taking their own life, or if they've sent a nude and they're being violated, or maybe they're being contacted by a terrorist group. You see, this is the scary part about all of this. If they're globally online, there's all kinds of people that want to reach our kids. Some of them want money, and others want to use them to become leaders in a terrorist kind of group. Group 764 is one of those. If you haven't looked it up, look at it. Group 764, it's got some other names, but that is a designated by the government, a terrorist group that reaches our kids. They just arrested a bunch of the leaders about 6-8 weeks ago, and they would get the kids to self-mutilate, cut the numbers and their letters in their arm, but they also motivate them to do swatting and doxing at schools and do all kinds of criminal activity. Well, as I began to realize, as the entire world is connected by internet, our kids, this is why my book is called Digital Warfare, Our Kids on the Front Line, because our kids are on the front line. They can be reached by terrorist groups. They can be reached by geopolitical enemies. They can be reached by any kind of enemy that we might have out there. They can be reached by any gang or cartel that is out there. They are on the World Wide Web. And the thing that I have said all along is we need a proactive program with schools where they begin to take kids in and get way past internet safety and that kind of thing, and talk about digital exploitation, talk about AI and the role of creating a deep fake, because already many students know how to do that. They know how to access the site, and they know how to send that to other people. Well, the problem with that is it's against the law. Our kids need to understand if they're doing that, they can go to prison for that kind of thing. That is child pornography, even if it's digitally created. That is called CSAM, child sexual abuse material. And so the first thing our kids need to hear from the schools who are putting them on the computers, and I'm not putting that down, I mean, this generation of young people, I'm not against technology. This is the first generation in all of history that will live in a globally connected world technologically. Okay, big word. We got to get them ready. They need to understand you use that technology to violate another human being. I don't care if you are 16 years old, that is against the law. And we need that kind of education. At the same time, though, we need to be able to educate these kids what financial sextortion is. You know, that when they go online, they can be accessed by people they can't even imagine what they're like. The Yahoo boys in Nigeria. And they will look good to you. And the minute you send that image, you are going to be caught up in a global scam, which may end up threatening your very life. Now, here's the problem and why this article is so important. And I can tell I'm already running out of time, so I may have to take this up again next week. But as we look at this, I say to myself, the bulk of the victims are school-age children. How do we get intervention? Now, this is high liability from a standpoint of a school, because what if it doesn't get handled right, or the kid ends up taking their own life, or maybe meeting up with one of these people and hurting themselves, or using their knowledge to harm another student? All of this is very, very scary. I think one of the first places we have to start, and I had the article right here I wanted to show you, as I read their article, and this thing goes on like 60 pages, and it goes on about the upside and the downside of the role of educators in this kind of thing. What they're saying is 20% of girls and 13% of boys aged 15 to 18, keep in mind this is in the UK, in England, have already sent a nude or a nude video or an explicit video of themselves. 1 out of 5. Okay, 60% of girls and 31% of boys have been asked to share a nude or semi-nude. Well, that's pretty good, because 2 out of 3 said no, apparently. I like to look at the upside of this if I can. But more than half, 54% of girls and 30% of boys had experienced someone sending them a nude or semi-nude. Even if they didn't send it, they had received it. 1 out of 2. So I think parents have to start to understand that this cannot be an issue of parents only. It cannot be an issue of schools only. But we have to provide safe haven everywhere we can. First of all, we need a huge level of preventative education on this. There ought to be documentaries all over the world going on for people to understand what is financial sextortion, specifically of young males. About something like 80% of the victims so far have been males. This is about third world countries using third world people to access and trick our kids. The minute they're tricked, they're turned back over to a cartel, and their lives will become living hell. Now, many of my other podcasts have been about how a parent should intervene. I mean, we need to have conversations with our kids right now. I don't care if they've had a phone 5 years and you know they're a good kid. It is the good kids that we are losing in this. So I think we need to, first of all, sit down and start to understand what financial sextortion is and use some of the resources at Me and Kids with your kids. We've got story after story on there. Go on YouTube and put in sextortion and suicide, teen suicide. You'll see the cases of these boys. They were the best of the best. Imagine losing your child to an overseas scam farm. I mean, seriously. And it's a conversation we need to have. But I also think we've got to take this on with schools. And I don't know exactly how to go about approaching it. One of the things is that I think schools need a curriculum on it. Anybody they put on a computer in a school needs to have an entire curriculum on sextortion and financial sextortion before they're allowed to go on a school computer. I think that's one of the important things. I think we've got to train and have consistency in our training, coming up with a solid curriculum that you can look at, maybe from Homeland Security or one of those people that, FBI or one of the groups that can sit down and say, this is what it looks like, this is how they operate, and this is what you're combating. Now, as I read the UK version of this, they have done an extremely thorough job on this. Questions and thoughts I had not even considered. Like, you have to assess the risk. Is this person just mildly upset, or did they do something and they're trying to get even with somebody else? Are you talking with a prepubescent minor, which is different than a teenager? Do they have devices at home? Is this taking place in schools? How do you report the incident? I mean, last year there were more than 30 million incidents of sextortion reported. How do you get anybody to investigate this quickly? I've been thinking maybe we could create a frontline center within a school where they're trained and immediately connected to law enforcement, where they could do an assessment fairly quickly and try to get them on if, in fact, they're threatening them with their life or that kind of thing. Now, there's a danger to this because what if it goes wrong? Everybody wants to sue a school. So that's a problem. That's a problem right there. But I do believe that we've got to find a way to protect our children. Schools are putting them online, and this is happening mostly to school-age kids, and especially in middle and high school kids. So as we look at that, I think that we need to understand what is going on. Now, I get that we're not all, like psychological counselors that can run interference on a regular basis. And there's a lot of complexity to this as I'm reading this UK article. And if you're an educator or a pastor or law enforcement, I think you should read these two articles on our newsletter because they start defining the incident. Is it an aggravated incident? Is this child's life in danger? I mean, we know sextortion cases that have ended up in murder or in kidnapping or kids sneaking out where they ended up losing their life. Is there an adult involved? Is it a U.S. adult or is it overseas? Or is this a youth only? Is this a youth that has malicious intent or a youth that is being oriented by a terrorist group? Or is it just someone who thought it'd be a lot of fun to mess around with? Maybe this is a romance gone wrong with revenge porn where they shared the photos and they broke up. Or maybe they're seeking sexual attention or other kinds of cases. In essence, you're doing a law enforcement assessment, in this case, in an education setting. So I understand all that I'm saying. I am not drawing any conclusions today. I welcome your feedback. You can write to me at opal, O-P-A-L, at meandkids.org. Give me your thoughts on it, especially if you're an educator or been in education. This is a very complex issue. I say to myself, How do we fix this so that we can say never again would a kid be violated? Now, I am a proponent of the idea of trying to get tech companies to flash offshore to any communication that originates outside the United States. Now, I'm just now proposing that, and I'm trying to get it in everybody's ear that I can that might have the authority to make that happen. But I think that that's a possibility, at least maybe at 3 o'clock in the morning when he thinks it's a 14-year-old kid down the street who wants his nude. He might see offshore and go, wait a minute, this isn't who I thought it was. It might also keep grandpa and grandma from sending money off to some proposed lover who's living on an oil rig in Saudi Arabia somewhere. Okay, pardon me as I get crusty here, but I work in this business all day long, and I'm saying maybe if we could do offshore. I don't know if it belongs in schools or not. I'm playing with the idea. I'd like to see the possibilities of it. I think we've got to join together. This is our kids' life at stake. This is the next generation of kids and the first generation that will live in a globally connected world. And it is up to all of us as leaders to shed the light, to give them the leadership, and give them that reinforcement to know that we believe in them and they're going to be on the front line, and we need them to do the right thing and be strong. My name is Opal Singleton. The organization is millionkids.org. You can write to me at opal, O-P-A-L, at millionkids.org. You can also make a donation if you like. This is tough business, and we need all your financial support we can get. We're at this almost 24/7 these days between the 8 of us, because it is happening so fast we don't have time for fundraising. So if you can send us a donation, we'd appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that you will continue to follow us. I'll see you next time on the next podcast. Be good to your family. Let them know you love them. See you next time. On the next podcast. Be good to your family. Let them know you love them. See you next time.